Why was this approved before finishing the review to see if mifepristone is safe for women?
Because there's a law that requires the FDA to approve a molecule if it's similar to a branded molecule. So we had no discretion if we chose to look at that application and say, no, we're not going to approve this. We'd 100% get sued and we'd 100% lose, and it would all happen very quickly because the law is very clear.
I'm with FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. It's such an honor to talk to you today.
Good to be with you, Elizabeth.
We'll start with some big news from last week, which is that the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices decided to remove the universal recommendation for the hepatitis B vaccine. As a doctor, do you think that mothers who have tested negative for hepatitis B need to give their babies that vaccine?
You know, a lot of moms who test negative for Hep B are asking, why do I need to do this on the day of birth? And so I was pleased to see the ACIP committee use some nuance and get away from absolutism and recognize that the risk in a Hep B negative mom is extremely, infinitesimally low for that child, that it's entirely reasonable to wait till the kid is 8 or 10 or 12 or something like that. We have to listen to parents. When they have good questions, we can't blow them off. And if we're really following the data on this, the data supports Hep B immunization for babies when the mom is Hep B positive or the vaccine status is unknown.
There was an internal memo recently in the FDA saying that the COVID-19 vaccine may have played a role in the deaths of at least 10 children. Could you walk us through the connection between COVID and those deaths?
Yeah, so we have, first of all, it's been reported before in a Senate subcommittee report. There are cases that have been documented even in the New England Journal of Medicine of young males who have died from myocarditis. That's been published, it's been out there. So it's been known that this is a complication. Myocarditis can affect as many as 1 in 2,600 young males after one of the COVID shots. And a rare subcomplication of myocarditis is severe illness and ICU stay and even death. And so parents have said that they believed their children have died from the COVID shot because the kid was otherwise healthy and then suddenly had a cascade of events starting immediately after the COVID shot. And these are, remember, many of these shots in the era of the last 4 years were mandated on young, healthy students to get into college or stay in college. And so when parents have said things about their children, we need to listen. So we did an investigation where we looked into it to decide whether or not there was a probable or possible link. And so that work is ongoing, but these data accrued over the last 4 years. So the moral question is, now that the FDA has data where links to a child death has been made to the COVID vaccine, do we have a moral duty to let the public know what we know and to let the public know more as we learn more about the details of it? I believe we do have a moral duty to do that.
Now that this correlation has been found, what are the next steps to protect kids in the future?
Well, I think information is powerful. We want to educate folks. Right now, there's a theory that a young 6-year-old boy needs another 70 COVID shots in his average lifespan. We really don't know if that's truly necessary. It's a theory, and there are pros and cons of that theory. And now we have at least one piece of information that says it's not 1,000% safe and free of any myocarditis risk. We now know there are some risks, albeit them rare. And so that's information that people can use. You know, the risk of myocarditis can be mitigated. First of all, if the kid has natural immunity to the circulating strain and that natural immunity is recent, then what are we doing? Immunizing them when they're already naturally immune to a circulating strain that is recent. The other opportunity is to space out the COVID. We could have spaced out the first and second dose during the pandemic in young, healthy children, especially boys who have a higher risk of myocarditis. But that recognition came too late. And so if we would have looked at these data earlier, we could have potentially avoided many of these cases. And of course, the issue of vaccine mandates in children has been very controversial. And our feeling has been that we don't support kicking kids out of school, insisting soldiers leave the military, insisting teachers be fired, that firefighters be fired, and other people be fired if they don't agree to the COVID shot mandate. We have not supported those mandates. And so this is a moment where people want some closure over what happened over those 4 years. And if you look back, insisting that upwards of 1 million people be fired from their jobs for not getting the vaccine, even if they already had circulating antibodies from natural immunity, even though they were ultra low risk, people want some closure to that issue. And this is a time for all the data to come out.
You've said there's going to be more data coming forward on that connection in the future. Is there anything you can preview for us there of what to expect on this connection data?
Not really, except that it's not new. We've known that there have been deaths from the COVID vaccine. We don't want to be an alarmist or create hysteria out there because these complications are rare. But denying that they occur is also not true. So we felt, we have a radical transparency agenda to try to rebuild public trust. Public trust has taken a massive hit over the last 4 years. Trust in doctors and hospitals has gone down. And look, I'm a doctor. I don't want to see trust in the toilet where it was coming in to office when we took office earlier this year. But trust in doctors and hospitals went from 71% of the public trusting us in 2019 down to 40% last year. That's a 31-point drop in the last administration in trust in doctors and hospitals. So we need to rebuild that trust, and part of the way we're going to do that is to show some humility and to be transparent with what we know and to say, I don't know when we don't know something.
Last month, you made a big announcement about hormone replacement therapy being more accessible to women. Why hasn't this changed until the Trump administration, and what has the reaction been that you've seen since this move?
Look, the president has given me a very clear charge to go bold, do what's right, and tell the truth, and not to worry about the lobbyists or the corporations. And so we told women the truth about hormone replacement therapy. Issues of women's health have been downplayed and ignored and not received the attention they have deserved for decades and decades. And in this administration, we're committed to elevating issues of women's health. So you saw our announcement on IVF and making IVF more accessible to women and more affordable. You see more research now at the NIH and women's health issues. And at the FDA, we decided to tell women the truth and get away from the fear machine that put black box warnings on estrogen products for postmenopausal women. And so we allowed the experts to share in an open forum, and then we announced that we're removing the black box warnings that were not based on science, they were based on dogma. And sadly, the reason it's important is the dogma that women should not take hormone replacement therapy after menopause, specifically starting it within 10 years of the onset of menopause, has resulted in 50 million women not getting a profound therapy that has long-term health benefits and short-term health benefits for the vast majority of women who take it. We're talking about reducing the risk of fatal heart attacks by 25 to 50%. That's the number one cause of death in women. But many of these health benefits have been not experienced by a generation of women over the last 23 years because of this dogma that took on a life of its own in 2002, and the FDA was a part of that bandwagon thinking by slapping these scary warnings on the products.
And I understand you're making an announcement on a similar subject related to men's health. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're very excited about this roundtable on testosterone therapy for adult men. Testosterone therapy is an emerging area of medicine, but it's been in a blind spot. We haven't talked about it. We've under-recognized and underappreciated some of the potential benefits. So we're going to have the experts now have a platform to be able to talk openly and honestly about the evidence on how testosterone can help men who have low testosterone levels and symptoms. And that's the key. There's a large group of men that have low testosterone in adulthood and symptoms from that low testosterone who are desperately seeking help, and they're not getting the right help or good help because there's been bad information. For example, there's been a dogma that testosterone replacement in adult men causes prostate cancer. a little bit similar to the dogma we saw with hormone therapy in women causing breast cancer. Turns out it is not true that the science supports that testosterone therapy causes prostate cancer. So we want men to know the issues around this and what the real data shows and what we know and what we don't know. And we think educating the public has a tremendous benefit to the health of the population.
Today, a report came out saying that the FDA is slow-walking the start of the review on the abortion pill that a lot of senators have called for. I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to that by asking, has that review begun?
Yeah, so there's a lot of rumors that are circulating out there. We live in a very partisan time, and so you're going to see the echo chambers of social media sort of magnify rumors, things that are just not true. There has been an ongoing review of mifepristone. It's actually required as part of a policy called REMS. And so there's always an ongoing review of that medication, and we need to be open to the fact that maybe there's a new drug-drug interaction that was not appreciated. Maybe there's a complication that was not recognized previously. And so we do an ongoing review, but we're also engaging in a robust study that can serve to validate or not validate other numbers that have been put out there in the literature. And so what we find in our study will be put out there in the literature, and it can be part of that broader discussion nationally. We're not going to decide what the results are before we've done the study. We're doing the study the right way, and when you do the study the right way, and I've done dozens of these studies as a Johns Hopkins professor. You got to do the studies in data the right way with the right pace. And when you do that, you really cannot predict either the results or the time frame for that study. So we're doing it the right way. The shutdown was a little bit of a setback in that, but we're going to do it. And whenever the results are available, we're going to make them public.
So that study has begun, and the ongoing study, and then that particular study the senators called for, both underway, and we'll see when the results come out.
Yeah, so there has been interest in this study and doing it the right way. So there are studies that are done using adverse events, self-reported data, and but that data is not very good. When you when you do a study based on self-reported data, you're not capturing a lot of the data that you want to know in a study. So appropriately, many members of Congress have said, hey, this is a good time to check in and do a robust study. So part of a robust study is data acquisition. And so we're in that data acquisition phase to get the right data to be able to do this study.
So one of these studies come out recently from Ethics and Public Policy Center says 11% of women experience adverse effects after taking the abortion pill at home. So one of the things they've asked to be looked at is if in-person distribution should be required for this. Is that something that you're concerned about, and do you think it's safe for these women to get this pill from the mail without seeing a doctor and take it at home?
Look, there was concern about the result by the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Now that study was done in claims data, so it didn't have granularity into the patient characteristics in a way that many researchers would want to have. So that's one of the reasons why we are doing a bigger, more robust study.
And some pro-lifers who've helped the president get elected were upset about the second generic abortion drug being approved before the shutdown. Why was this approved before finishing the review to see if mifepristone is safe for women?
Because there's a law that requires the FDA to approve a molecule if it's similar to a branded molecule. So we had no discretion if we chose to look at that application and say, no, we're not going to approve this. We'd 100% get sued and we'd 100% lose, and it would all happen very quickly because the law is very clear. Now with drugs that we approve as new branded drugs, it's a very different law. So we have discretion to weigh risks and benefits. But when it comes to generic compounds, the law is pretty clear. And that's why in the first Trump administration, the first generic mifepristone was approved. It was the same calculus. Hey, this is a controversial thing, and what should we do about it? And the discussion and the conclusion was pretty clear. The law requires us to do something, so we don't have discretion as an FDA. And so they followed the law. And that's what we decided to do, to follow the law.
Do you have an estimated time that for that study to be finished that you said you're working on taking your time, doing the right way, that Senator Hawley and others have called for?
We're going to do the study the right way. And I can tell you, being in academics, you might think a study can be done in 3 or 4 weeks, but the studies are, when done properly, are much more involved, and you can't really predict an end date. Now, you can get a general sense that this is something that is feasible, that we can do once the data comes in. You have to review the data. First of all, you have to clean the data, make sure that there are no missing data fields that change the way the analysis is designed. And if there are, then you change the design of the study. And you account for how the landscape of the data actually is and the way it presents. And then you look at the preliminary exploratory results, and then you change the analysis to account for confounding variables. And then you repeat and you validate. So these are all routine steps in robust data analysis. Also, studies are often repeated, done by multiple reviewers or statisticians. So we're going to do it the right way. And look, I know there are a lot of voices in this space, but I'm committed to doing this the right way.
Who can we expect to be kind of overseeing that study? Will it be more recent appointees from the Trump administration, people who have been there a longer time? Whose hands will this be in?
I mean, ultimately, I'm responsible. And so this analysis is going to be done under my auspices, and it'll be reported up to me, and I'm going to be involved.
On children's health, what FDA actions are on the table in the near future to reduce children's exposure to petroleum-based food dyes and other chemical additives?
So we've had a tremendous amount of support in the food industry for our action to call for the removal of all 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply. And so it's going extremely well. We're also seeing an awareness we've never seen before. We, again, have to listen to parents. We have to listen to the American people. And when they say that they have seen their kids engaged in aggressive behavior or attention deficit disorder behavior, and they remove all petroleum-based food dyes completely from that food supply, and the kids' behavior then improves or changes. And then a year down the road, they are reintroduced to the petroleum-based food dyes, and the behavior regresses. Those are data points. I mean, that's not a formal randomized controlled trial, but those are data points we have to look at, because we cannot wait for a 10-year randomized controlled trial of what happens to kids when you expose them to a new chemical. We have to use common sense. We have to listen to parents. Oh, and by the way, we've got a randomized controlled trial of artificial petroleum-based dyes, and it was not favorable. It suggested that it's involved in behavioral disorders in children, specifically ADHD. So we want to create awareness. We want to see the food supply continue to move in the right direction. We are rewriting the dietary guidelines right now, the broken food pyramid. We're involved in a review of all the chemicals in the U.S. food supply. We've got 1,000+ chemicals that are not in the food supply in Europe, but they appear in the food supply of the United States. It's because of a loophole called GRAS. We're closing the GRAS loophole. So we're very busy on the side of food. People forget that healthy food is a massive priority in health, and we've not been talking about it until this administration.
There's been some concern in the media lately from fellow doctors as well about Tracy Beth Hogue as acting director of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. Could you tell us why you believe she's a good fit for the role?
She's terrific. So first of all, MD, PhD, high-level scientist with an epidemiology background. She has an incredible command of so many subjects. She's highly respected in the field, trained at some of the best institutions, served on the faculty at MIT and others. We want this type of high-caliber scientist at the FDA. So I have full support for Tracy Beth Hogue. And we're going to continue to bring in top-notch level scientists into the FDA. You know, many people have perceived that the FDA has been corrupted over the years. And some people believe that the industry feels that they own the FDA. But the FDA is not owned by the industry, it's owned by the American people. And so my job is to safeguard the public and at the same time make sure that that agency is entirely independent in its scientific evaluations. And so Tracy Beth Hogue is perfect in fitting in line with our mission to deliver an amazing FDA, to bring more cures and meaningful treatments to the American public faster and safer. And we've got very specific goals. We want to see a cure or powerful treatment to type 1 diabetes, to some neurodegenerative disorders. We want to see a therapy for PTSD, we want to see a universal flu shot. We want to see new powerful cancer treatments for different types of cancer, including some stage 4 cancers. We want to see rare diseases treated. We want to see innovation in that space take off faster than we've seen in the past. We have a new plausible mechanism pathway now, so that if you're treating a rare condition, we need to know the mechanism of the treatment, but we may not require any patient data in order to authorize the use of that product, because we've got to be practical. So we've got to use common sense and use gold standard science.
You mentioned the universal flu shot. Could you update me on the progress there and how you believe this will help people specifically?
Yeah, I believe it's in phase 1 clinical trials, or between phase 1 and phase 2. And, the current flu shot doesn't work very well. You get it, you come back. The following year, we take another guess as to which strain is going to be circulating. The guesses are not very good. The flu shot mutates very rapidly. Even if we do think it's a good match, another strain could emerge as the dominant strain in a very short period of time. The protection is not even. It's initially good when it is a good match, and then it's transient. It goes down to near baseline levels, and you have new circulating strains. So overall, the flu shot is a bit of a crapshoot each year when it comes to guessing which strain is going to be dominant. If we had a universal flu shot that could protect against all strains, or mutations, including mutations that have not yet occurred in nature, then you may be able to get decades-long protection from a single flu shot if it has different targets of that flu shot, flu vaccination. And so that's a very promising concept. It has garnered a lot of interest, and I personally would love to see us have a lifelong immune protection to the flu, instead of every year us doing this whole roundup of people to say, come in and get your flu shot each year.
You're working on new regulatory standards on the co-administration of vaccines, I believe. Why are you doing this, and how is this going?
Well, there's been very few standards on co-administration of vaccines. And so we're just saying we want to see a little more science if you're going to propose giving 2 vaccines at the same time, 2 different vaccines at the same time. One of the ways that vaccines work is they promote an inflammatory and immune response. And so when you give multiple pro-inflammatory therapeutics at the same time, you're going to increase the body's inflammation. And inflammation is now recognized to not only have some positive benefits, but also some negative health effects. And so we're just saying we want to use basic principles that we use for other medications and apply those to vaccines as well. We're not taking away anyone's flu shot or anyone's vaccine on the childhood schedule. I mean, we always have to be vigilant for safety signals that we can't predict or may not know about. But there's no plan to take away anyone's vaccines or anyone's opportunity to get a vaccine. But there's a big fear machine out there that is trying to say otherwise. So we need to be honest and truthful and remind people that we are here to advance vaccine science and not take away anyone's vaccines.
You've said recently that the FDA is going to cut red tape to deliver more safe and affordable over-the-counter drugs. How are you going to do this?
Well, why is it that certain drugs need a prescription? It makes no sense at all. If a drug is safe, if there's no addictive potential, if you don't need lab tests to monitor your liver function or something like that, what is the purpose of restricting medications that are safe to prescription only. And something magical happens when drugs go over the counter. When they're on the shelf for sale in the store, you see the price right there. You don't have to play the money games of what the pharmacy benefit manager is paying the pharmacy from your employer who's a fourth party involved in the transaction. There's a power to price transparency. And so when we see that in markets in general, you see a global reduction in price. And one of the biggest goals in healthcare in this administration is to lower the price of medications. You've seen us do it through most favored nation status pricing, letting pharmaceutical companies know the U.S. is the largest purchaser of drugs. We want the best price for drugs. Why are we paying 10 times more than some other wealthy countries? And so lowering drug prices is a massive priority. Moving more drugs to over-the-counter may be one innovative way to do that. And we're also increasing the number of generics that we approve and the number of generics that are approved for an expensive class of medications called biologics. Those generic versions are called biosimilars, and we've reduced the time and financial requirement to develop a biosimilar in half. And so we're going to keep going to lower drug prices for everyday Americans.
Another thing you're cracking down on is pharmaceutical ads, sending enforcement letters. How will you be enforcing regulations about this?
Yeah, so physicians are broadly united around the concept that these direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical ads are distorting the physician-patient relationship. And why don't we trust our doctors to be giving us good information? Now, there's a First Amendment right that these companies have to advertise. We're not going to infringe on that right, but there are clear regulations in the government that say a company cannot create a misleading impression of their drug, and they have to provide a fair balance of information, which means they have to list side effects or list the warnings or a fair balance of information. So what we've seen is that the FDA has increasingly become lax in enforcing those regulations. And we've seen pharmaceutical ads blossom over that same period of time. In the last administration, in 2023, the FDA sent out one enforcement letter to pharmaceutical companies about an ad. Last year, they submitted 0 enforcement letters. A couple months ago, I sent out 1,500 warning letters and over 100 cease and desist letters. We're serious about this. So we don't want to see bad information out there. We want to see our current regulations followed. And I personally would love to see pharmaceutical companies take part of their 20 to 25% of their company's budget that goes to marketing to be redirected to lower drug prices for everyday Americans.
What do you see as the FDA's main legacy in your first year as we near about 1 year of the Trump administration?
I'm really proud of the accomplishments of the team here in the first year, taking massive steps to eliminate unnecessary animal testing requirements, using real-world data, reducing the number of clinical trials required for a new drug from 2 to 1 well-controlled, well-designed, statistically powerful trial. That means companies can run twice as many drugs through the clinical trial, pivotal trial process. We want to see more cures and meaningful treatments. We've already made some progress. We've got very aggressive goals for the next few years. We have enacted not only a healthy food agenda, but a radical transparency agenda aimed at rebuilding trust. And part of that is making our decisions public. When the FDA decides not to approve something, we need to make that official decision letter with all the reasons public information, because we should have accountability and we should have nothing to hide, and the public deserves to know that there were sterility manufacturing violations or a clinical trial failed or whatever the reason is that a drug may not be approved. And we want to see more cures. We want to see more powerful treatments out there. So we're going to keep working on this agenda. It's a bold agenda. We've gotten a ton done. We have AI now at the agency for our scientific reviewers. We have a lot going on, so it's an exciting time at the FDA. We have a lot of new scientists who are asking to come and work at the FDA, and so we're hiring a new group of scientists to come in and help increase our delivery of more cures and meaningful treatments faster than in the past. We have one pilot program, for example, that gives answers in a matter of weeks from when the application is received. That's unheard of. Typically, it's roughly a year. We have to ask big questions like, why does it take 10 to 12 years for a new drug to come to market? And can we use AI to help in the process?
Do you have a holiday health recommendation?
I mean, I like to eat healthy. I like to eat whole foods, things that come from good soil, foods that come from animals that are raised in a very healthy and humane way. I'm lucky to have a wife that cooks at home most nights, and so I've often had patients ask me, like, what's one thing I can do to eat healthier or to live healthier that's easy, something easy to do. And I often tell them, drink good water. Drink water instead of sugary drinks or drinks with things that you don't even know what's in them. And so everyone's got their own ways in which they can make small steps towards a healthier living. But this is the exciting thing about Secretary Kennedy and this new MAHA agenda, is people are talking about health now in a conversation that we've never had before, about school lunches, not just putting 6-year-olds on Ozempic. We've initiated now through the USDA waivers for the SNAP program so that the SNAP taxpayer dollars don't have to go to junk food. We are working on a definition for ultra-processed foods. We're rewriting the food pyramid. We are doing so much in the area of food that I think you're really going to see now a revolution in medicine to talk not just about drugs and operations, but to talk about food and the microbiome and a healthy gut and body inflammation and stress. And so these are the areas where we are focused. We've never had conversations at a federal level before on the importance of natural light exposure for children and the importance of circadian rhythms and one's sleep quality and things like estrogen in postmenopausal women. So we want to be proactive on health, and so that is a big agenda at the FDA.
One more fun question for you. What is it like to work with Secretary Robert F. Kennedy?
It's fun. I mean, first of all, the guy is a phenom. He works out like crazy, and he reads everything, and he has very good judgment when it comes to a lot of the questions that we present to him. He wants to hear from everybody. Some people don't like it that he asks certain questions, but he really values the input of the medical doctors around him. And so we have very robust conversations that are productive that we've never had before in government, talking about things like what's in a school lunch program, talking about things like what's best for children. So he's great to work with, as is Dr. Oz and Dr. Bhattacharya and Jim O'Neill. So it's been a good group. I never expected to have such a very close working relationship with some of these folks that I didn't really know before coming on the job. But for example, Dr. Oz and I talk about approving a new therapy at the FDA and then getting Medicare to pay for it immediately so Americans can have access to it. And so we do a lot together, and I think having that synergy goes a long way in delivering for the American people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Makary. Really appreciate your time
today.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
It's been great. Appreciate it. Thanks. Great.